And Commissioner Carter?
Present.
City Manager Goodrum?
Here.
City Attorney Hearn?
Here. Folks, we normally take a moment of silence, and I'd like to take a moment of silence today and to have you say your own prayers to your own God. And if we could, just bow our heads and say a moment of prayer. Thank you. We're honored tonight to have a young man from Eagle Ridge Elementary School by the name of Timothy Hanna, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Hold on 1 second, Tim, because your dad wants to get a picture. So why don't you come on up, Dad? Okay, you're on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's give the young man a round of applause. Don't leave yet, Tim. We have for you something to remember today by, and probably 25 years from now, you go into your closet and you'll see this that says, "I led the pledge at a city commission meeting in Coral Springs, Florida." So I want to see this 25 years from now. And I'll ask if Commissioner Vignola would come down, since this is one of your wife's future students, I believe. So at least he can go show the picture and say, "See, I was with your husband."
I knew your dad when we were kids, so.
All right. Now, I'd like to have all of the commission come down for this next one. You know, last week, myself, Commissioner Carter, and Vice Mayor Simaglia were honored to be asked to go over to Park Summit to congratulate a young lady on turning 108. Today, we are honored again by having a young lady who turned 29 and a couple more years. But this is her century. She's 100 years old. And I'm not going to ask you, but I'm going to ask them to walk over here. And I'm going to ask, if we could, I want to do, you could do the proclamation.
This is a special recognition to Linda Robinson. It says, "Congratulations on reaching such a momentous milestone. Living to 100 is a testimony that your life has been filled with joy, health, and happiness. We are honored to have you as one of our centenarians who live in the community with everything under the sun," and signed by the mayor and the rest of the commission.
And now what I'd like to do is get a picture of you first with the commission, if we could. Linda, we'll come over there if it's easier for you, or it probably would be, so why don't we go over there? And then I want your whole family. Why don't we get, Linda, come on over here.
Come on over here. Come.
Christine, where do you want to do this?
Lou's here?
Come on, Linda, right there. Right here, right in the middle. All right. Well, Linda, yeah.
There you go, perfect. Good. Okay. All right, right over here. One more.
Now, I know we got a lot of people, so what we're going to do is, if the family could get behind us, we'll get a picture of the entire family. So why don't you all get behind us? Well, hold on, the smaller ones stay here, because you're not going to be singing.
That means you, buddy. Come on. We'll send you guys.
Oh, yeah, we already got some.
Heavy on the dais.
I feel bad. I'm tall.
It's too far away.
Would they be better up on the dais?
Everybody all right?
Now, will everybody please stand up and give Linda a round of applause? And Linda, God bless you, and we hope to see you the next 10 years, every year, and we're going to make you the #1 recipient of the Centurion Award. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to have public comment. Has anybody signed up?
Mayor, we do not have any signed speakers this evening.
Does anybody want a public comment? Of
Carol.
Actually, I have one. I just didn't get it turned in.
course it is.
Good evening. My name is Carol Smith. I live at 4047 Northwest 115th Avenue in Coral Springs. I just have received word today that the ballot this November is going to be 16 pages long. That's 8 sheets of paper without any city information on it. That's going to be a whole lot of stuff for people to go through. So I want to invite everyone to come to the Northwest Regional Library next Saturday, September 29th, where the League of Women Voters will give an overview of all of the 24 issues that are on the ballot, followed by a candidate forum for the 2 seats, seat 2 and seat 4, for the Coral Springs City Commission. So that's your one-stop shop to find out everything you need to know to be an informed voter and vote on November 6th.
What time?
2 o'clock.
Carol, we appreciate the League of Women Voters, and you provide a great service to the community. And,
Well, this has been a fun trip this year.
well, you know, with the constitutional amendments, and they're very confusing, and I'm not going to get into
No, they're terrible.
an argument or
Yeah.
a speech right now, but the people have to understand what they're going to be voting on.
And we not only have the constitutional amendments, but we have 11 for the Broward County Charter, which
Yes.
are also important.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more speakers? Good evening.
Mayor, Commissioners. A couple weeks ago, Skip, you know I was here talking about the AT&T tower that was going to be placed in front of our community, Turtle Run.
May I have your name, please, for the record?
I'm sorry. It's Chris Capish.
Thank you very much.
You want my address?
Yeah.
No.
No?
Yeah.
We have your address on file.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to basically come here tonight, and as often happens in government and any kind of type of political or board position, we often don't get thanked for things that we do. And I came here tonight, Skip, to basically personally thank you and John Hearn, our city attorney, for taking action on something that I brought as a surprise to the commission. And you guys went out and took action on it, and we now have the pole installed, but it's not near the entrance, it's down the street, and it's exactly what we were asking for. And our whole community wants to thank you for what you've done. And you've gone out of your way to do that. That's the way I see it, because it was can be seen as a little issue to some people, but it was a big issue to other people. And you guys did a great job, and I wanted to send you kudos and say thank you.
Well, that's very nice, because usually we don't get that. We usually get the note saying how crummy we're doing, but thank you, Chris, we appreciate it.
No, what I'm saying is that when somebody does something, I think it's important that we come out and say thank you.
Well, none of us knew about it.
Right.
You could see from our expressions, none of us knew about it. And it was just, thank God, we were able to get a meeting with all of the players, and they saw the need to do something. And we have been cooperating with all the telecommunication companies to try to make the best telecommunications for City of Coral Springs. And I think that meeting showed that we have a good relationship.
Yes. Thank you, Skip.
Any other speakers? Turtle Run, Water Management Districts.
Negative.
Joe?
None of those. Good evening. Joe Morera, 3275 Northwest 114th Lane. Commissioner, Mr. Mayor. We once again are putting another tax increase on the residents of the city. Last year, this commission took a huge jump on the millage rate. And we believe that at that point, we were going to address a lot of our budget needs. There were some things that was left off the table after some discussion on theirs, and it came to a consensus of what the millage should have been at that point. I believe the community is reaching the point where the millage rate should be pared back at some point. We need to address, hopefully, some gaps within our budget that we could manage our funding a little better. But I think that the continuing increases year after year is going to create a great strain on our residents. And I hope that at some point in time, albeit this commission or another makeup of the commission, looks into the budget needs, especially the departments that are consuming a huge percentage of our budget, and really try to find some relief for the residents. I think will be a welcome position and a need that they will need, and they will certainly thank you for that.
Well, and Commissioner Vignola, I'm going to recognize you in a second. As you know, most of the city's budget is personnel, and probably 2/3 of it is the police department. And it's very difficult to run a city with public safety and health in mind without having the right personnel. The millage rate is not going up this year, and that was based upon a commitment that Mr. Goodrum made to us last year, that they are going to attempt to try to make sure that this millage rate is going to pay for what we need. We have attempted and started some zero-based budgeting by department, so that if we have excess people, we're going to try to get rid of them. Not get rid of them, but make sure that they're not getting money for purposes we don't need. And let me tell you, the only reason why we got a AAA rating from Fitch, and what's the other one, Mike? Moody's. Is it Moody's? Is because of the fiscal stability of our city and the fiscal responsibility that this commission has brought to these issues. And Irma did not help us in the least bit. And now I'm going to recognize Commissioner Vignola.
I think the big thing we have to understand in the past year, a lot of things have changed as far as what our residents feel the needs are when it comes to police officers in our schools. We had the funds to go ahead and put an extra officer in our high schools. I think that's something that, when you look at other communities talking about putting guardians that aren't sworn police officers out there to protect our children, we had the ability, because of that tax increase, to go ahead and do that. And that was the most pressing issue I've heard in the community over the past year, obviously, especially since February 14th. But I think this is, I understand where you feel, the taxes are a burden, but I think when you expect a certain level of service, and I think that's the way our residents feel, they want a certain level of service, and they expected to have those extra officers in the schools, and this budget allows us to do that and continue to do that in the future, so.
And
Thank you.
Anybody
I'm
else?
aware of,
Okay, Joe, thank you for bringing it. Hey, believe me, you're not the only one who's complaining. I can remember that going back to Ben Franklin, he says, no one likes taxes, man. And I bet you anybody here, is there anybody out there who likes taxes? Raise your hand. Well, we got one guy, but.
no, I'm aware of the needs. It's just that at a certain point in time, there reaches a threshold in where the impact of what we are providing versus how the residents are able to support it financially, we create a strain on the makeup of the residents in the city. And that will come to be at a certain point if this path continue. So that's all the concern that I was raising.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Anybody else want to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the agenda. Item number 4, ordinance 2018-105. Mr. Hearn, you're recognized.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. We're going to do item 1 and 2.
Which one?
Items 1 and 2, 2018-039 final millage rate and 2018.
You see what I did is I didn't go to, let's go to 1 and 2 before we get to 3.
Yeah, it's okay.
Resolution 2018-039. I guess I tried to forget it since Joe just brought up taxes. Maybe I thought I'd
Absolutely,
not
Mayor.
bring it up and fool everybody.
So we're going to do two things tonight, and they're both going to be public hearings. The first thing that we must do under law is to set our millage rate, which was just discussed, and then secondly, to consider the approval of the budget. So I will read Resolution 2018-039. That's a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Coral Springs adopting, certifying, and levying a millage rate of $5.8732 on tangible personal property and assessed real property located within municipal limits of the City of Coral Springs, Florida, which is $0.3366 or 6.08% more than the rollback rate of 5.5366 mils, and establishing a debt service millage rate of $0.2652 for fiscal year 2018-19, providing for an effective date. Mayor, as you know, we had this passed at first hearing and public reading on meetings of July 25th and September 12th, and this is the setting. We'll first open it up to a public hearing, and then you can go ahead and consider it.
All right, before we open it up, Ms. Gibbons, if you want to provide us something, just in case public wants to talk about what you're talking.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and Commission, for your time and dedication toward the formation of our 2019 budget. We started back in November, where we had 3 strategic planning workshops. We had 2 public budget workshops, or two workshops for the budget, and then last week's public hearing. And just to highlight, one of the strategic planning goals that we did discuss and that you set was to have a responsible city government, financially sound, providing exceptional services, which are highlighted in the presentation as well as what we'll talk over today. So the presentation, then we will, I'll hand it over to John Hearn, where he'll go over the resolution and ordinance. So at this point, I know that they are pulling up the slide deck right now to go to the second public budget hearing. And as they do that, I'll continue on discussing the city's budget. Includes a $219.7 million budget, net budget. We have 10 funds in that, and we have 869 positions. The residents and the businesses experience an exceptional level of service that the commission and staff are very proud to provide. And this slide highlights some of those initiatives that they may experience in the upcoming year. And as well, there's a more in-depth read. It's a 200-page document called the proposed budget, and that's available on our website. And I have to say thank you very much to the budget and strategy team on their work, as well as the other department directors in putting that together. I'll reference that again later, but that is a document that is there for the public, and I do like referencing it from time to time. As communicated last week in the public hearing, this slide illustrates the current year-end projection and the fact that we are going to be paying $6.8 million of a $9 million hurricane, Hurricane Irma. Again, Hurricane Irma cost $9.8 million. Last year, fiscal year, we paid about $3 million of that. This year, we had $6.8 million that we are basically have to paying the bill for that. So the next step is that to say, you know, how much do we think we're going to get back from FEMA? Right now, we look at $9.6 million. So again, going back, how much do we have to pay this fiscal year? $6.8 million. How are we going to do that? Last week, we talked about the revenues coming in favorably by 1% and expenditures coming in within 1%. At that point, we have a surplus of $2.3 million. We'll also be looking at the unassigned reserves that we'll have to tap into, as well as a contribution to reserves that we were planning on doing of $2.45 million. At that point, we will fall right around $45,000 below our stabilization fund. I say that, and we have still not yet ended our fiscal year. So once finance comes in and they may have to do a couple tweaks on some entries, then that number can fluctuate. But right now, that's what we're looking at. Now, what is a stabilization fund requirement? It will be $21.8 million, and we will have a shortfall of that. Again, I go back to the projected reimbursement of $9.6 million. What are we planning on doing with that? Well, we'll have to replenish the stabilization fund shortfall, replenish the fire fund and water and sewer fund for IRMA expenses, as well as reserve funding for capital expenditures so that we can avoid issuing debt in the future for some of those identified projects. Now, the city currently has an open line of credit for $10 million, and this will span over 18 months, as we believe the reimbursement will come in during that time. So how does this look like on our reserves? You can see on the 2018, the projected bottom line. You can see the stabilization fund falling below that 17%. Every year, at some point, we never know when, we get a phone call from one of the rating agencies. It could be all three. It could be Moody's, Standard & Poor's, it could be Fitch. This year, we had a phone call from Moody's, and this is the time that they get to perform the creditworthiness review, and this is in addition to the external audit that does happen once a year to verify the city's credit financial debt position. Kim Moskowitz, the finance director, and I had a series of calls and for that Fitch rating review, and that occurred again a couple months ago back in July. And we walked through the city's expenditures, we walked through the revenues, we talked about the impact of Hurricane Irma, which always boils down to what's the city's 5-year forecast? How much do you have in revenues? How much do you have in reserves? The question is always, what's your plan? And as you can see, when I talk about the strategic goal of being financially sound, as illustrated here in a positive 5-year forecast, we can say we agree, and we can say that we are financially strong, we are stable. That is how Moody's also, Fitch described us as well. Again, if you want to get into the numbers, I would absolutely reference you to go to the proposed budget book. Last public hearing, we talked about some of the revenues. Throughout the year, we always talk about expenditures and how we're being able to provide the level of service that we do, and that comes from the expenditure side. So if anyone wants to look into this more in depth, that's where they would go. So again, in those conversations that we have with Moody's, with Fitch, with any of them, what kind of things do we discuss? It's the things that we discuss every day in my office and throughout the city. The most important function for us is to be good stewards of our taxpayers' dollars and providing the highest level of service and continuing on doing with enhancements and doing so in the lowest, most responsible cost so that we can have a sustainable financial future. So how do we do that? In 2019, what we focused on was slowing down the cost escalation. We had to make decisions within the organization to reduce those expenditures. We knew that the revenue growth was only about 2.8%, so then we had to live within that. That's where we had to say, you know what, we need to cut back. The merit increases need to be at a rate that we can afford. We need to ask the employees and talk to them and say we need to cost share with you. This year we're going into a 90-10 cost share split, and over the 5 years we'll get ourselves to an 80-20 split. We're also having to manage the vacancies. As positions come up and people leave, retire, then we need to look at to say, you know, where is that position best fit? Is it best fit somewhere else, or shall we reduce that FTE count? We're also going to be encouraging employees focus groups. That's what we always do. In doing so, we're going to reward those employee groups that come up with innovative ideas to be able to do business in a much more innovative and cost saving way. The only thing that we really, I will say it's good, we are able to meet 25% of our capital requirements, but at the same time, that's 75% of the capital that we aren't looking at yet. So going into next year's budget, 2020's budget, at that point, we're really going to be looking hard into our plan for capital. So when we talk to those rating agencies in even the outlying years, What we talk about with them are diversifying our revenue sources that other cities may levy, such as a stormwater. We talk about unfunded mandates and how we react to that. We have one coming up with the homestead exemption, and what is our plan around that? We also talk about the fact that we need to keep up with the rate of inflation. So the fact that we can answer these questions at any point in time through the year, when a phone call comes, whether it's Fitch, whether it's a resident calling, whether it's anybody. These are the items that we really come back and we talk to about them. So what is the city looking at in 2019? Staff recommends to maintain the current millage rate. Any millage rate above the rollback rate is advertised as a proposed tax increase. So if you look at last Sunday's paper, it showed a proposed tax increase, even though the recommendation is to keep the millage rate the same. What are other cities paying? And what are they doing right now in their budget hearings? You can see the lighter shade is what we had in 2018, and 19 are the proposed. 8 of the 10 cities are shown below are increasing their millage rate while we are staying the same. What's the impact on the average single-family home for their property and taxes going up? The median home price is right around $355,000. However, our homeowners are staying in their homes, and Save Our Homes are keeping that assessed value low at $260,000. So for the average single-family home, around assessed at $260,000, that's that number at the top of their trim. It's an increase of $62.24. That breaks down to $5.19 a month. How much a year's tax bill goes to the city? We get this question a lot. 30% goes to the city of Coral Springs, right under. The largest piece, meaning the largest amount that residents pay, goes to the school board. That's at 34%. Then, right under 30%, 29.3% goes to the city of Coral Springs, followed by Broward County. So the biggest misconception that comes into the budget office is how much of my city, they think that the entire tax bill goes to the city, and we do have to inform them that only 30% actually goes to the city for the services and the level of service that we provide for them. And lastly, if you pick up your home and move it over to, let's say, the city of Miramar, what kind of taxes do they assess on that same house? They would be paying $396 more if they moved to Miramar. If you picked up that house and put it in Pompano Beach, then you can kind of see how it looks with paying $197 less in Pompano Beach.
Okay. This is open for public hearing. Does anybody want to testify? Seeing none, do I?
I'll move to approve it.
All right, moved by Commissioner Vignola, seconded by Vice Mayor Semaglia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Let's move on to the next item, which is ordinance 2018-117.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Coral Springs, Florida, finalizing and adopting the annual operating budget and capital improvement program for fiscal year 2018-2019. Review, modified, and approved by the City Commission at meetings held on July 25th, 2018, September 12th, 2018, and September 20th, 2018, which includes the budget for the general fund, water and sewer, fire, solid waste, charter school, public art, debt service, health and liability, equipment services, tree trust funds, and capital improvement program funds. Providing that in the event of variation from the total budget is or becomes necessary, this ordinance shall be amended only by a subsequent ordinance consistent with Chapter 166 Florida statutes, the Charter and Code of Ordinances of the City of Coral Springs, Florida. Providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for an effective date. This is a request to hold a public hearing, approve, and adopt the ordinance.
All right, Ms. Gibbons, I believe you've probably gone through all of this already. Is there anything more you want to add?
Mayor, if I could add something just real quick.
Mr. Goodrum.
Just make a couple points on this, especially with the comments earlier. One, our employees have sacrificed and worked hard to put together a budget that is reducing our costs over this 5-year forecast. There's $6.5 million that has been reduced, including within the police department, approximately $4 million over that period of time. And I would just also like to point out, since the police department was referenced, that we had a third party come in and evaluated our finances. And one of the things that was very clear was our finances within the police department were very aggressive in position, being that They were not out of line, they were not high. When you actually look at the number of officers we have, we do more with less officers. We have lower number of officers for our population size than the average, and our officers do a tremendous job of being able to do more with less officers. And I think at the end of the day, our investment in the police department, we get a really good return on it. That's my only comments.
And the point that I made, and I asked a couple of years ago that we do zero-based budgeting on departments, we're doing that, and have we found any fat?
Mayor, I would just say the way we do the budget, and the way, for us, budget's not a one-year activity. Budget's not something that we look at a calendar and say we're gonna start. It is a daily activity. It is a daily, our budget office working with our directors working on their budgets. This year alone, we've already reduced the number of staffing we have in one area by 3 by being able to outsource that work and get a equivalent level of service without reducing any people, those vacancies we had. But this is a daily occurrence of how we do the budget, how we find ways to do that. So it's just the way we operate daily. We're always finding efficiencies. We're making adjustments as we go. And then with this plan, our employees have really sacrificed and taken on a much greater burden of healthcare cost, and as a result has reduced expenditures by about $6.5 million over the.
Any other questions? Commissioner Vignola.
My question, I just want to comment. When you look at your total tax bill, and I'm looking at mine, I have it up right here. My taxes with the city, with all the fees and everything, ad valorem, non-ad valorem, is going up to $68.30. Think about all the services that our city provides: police, fire, public works, parks, I mean, all the different things that we use. In comparison, the water district that I live in, the Coral Springs Improvement District, which is not the city of Coral Springs, for drainage, they're raising my fees this year $127.42. They provide one service. So I just want people to understand that when you go ahead and you look at the budget and stuff, how much services you get from the city of Coral Springs versus other government agencies out there. And the cost of doing business goes up for everybody every year, as does the city. But I just wanted to highlight that aspect. So,
Commissioner Daley.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to follow up. I know after our first public budget meeting, we had agreed and that staff would kind of look into the option of getting this information out to the public, doing some sort of informative video or something to that effect, focusing on kind of what Commissioner Vignola just touched on, what actually goes to the city, what services we provide, how it compares to other stuff like that. I really would like to see us kind of do a larger than usual public outreach campaign to let people know what's actually been going on here.
Okay.
I am seeing it in.
Commissioner Carter.
But, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am seeing it in Nextdoor, that social arena. Lynn Martzel's doing a great job of posting and so people understand. And so it's not, it's probably not everywhere, but I have seen it.
I just wanted to see, I have not seen it on Nextdoor. You're kind of like the Nextdoor guru, and I'm like the Facebook, Twitter guru, so I just haven't seen anything there. So I know we're working on it. I just want to see if we can kind of maybe ramp it up, especially after tonight, once we take the final votes and everything else.
Okay, we're open this to public comment. Anybody want to speak, testify? Okay, seeing none, do I hear any motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by
Second.
Commissioner Vignola, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to the item that I was going to move on to first, 2018-105. Mr. Hearn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. This is first reading of an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Coral Springs, Florida, amending Chapter 4, Section 4-7 of the Code of the City of Coral Springs, entitled Animal Control, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, providing for effective date. Request to hold a public hearing, approve, and set second reading. Mayor, before we do that, just for everyone, the changes here are made when the language in here was not clear about a dog being illegally on a property, and if they bit somebody, the way the language was would indicate it was only if the dog was legally on the property. Obviously, we wanted to change that. And also, in addition to requiring a leash, they also have a requirement to maintain control of the leash. There's been times when there's a leash on the dog and the dog's still running wild, so we're changing, suggesting that we change that just to clarify the ordinance. And this is a first reading, open to the public.
Okay, anybody want to talk about animal control? Okay, I don't see anybody want to talk about animal control. Any motions?
I'll move it.
Moved by Vice Mayor Semaglia, seconded by Commissioner Vignola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moves on to second reading. Going on to consent agenda, does anybody want to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, do I hear any motions?
Second.
Go on. Okay. Moved by Commissioner Daley,
Second.
seconded by Vice Mayor Semaglia. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Going on to interlocal agreement, Mr. Carpenter. You're here. I see you're here. Let's talk about what an interlocal agreement is.
Technical assistance here. Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. Paul Carpenter, Transportation Planner with the city. I'm here to speak about the 2018 Transportation Surtax.
Mr. Carpenter, I'm sorry, would you make sure your microphone is on because I'm not picking you up?
It's on, but you gotta have to move it closer to, or
Too tall.
that's it.
How's that?
Better.
Paul Carpenter, Transportation Planner with the city, to talk about the 2018 Transportation Surtax, which I think you're all aware of, but I'm going to give you a short presentation. There are a few people from Broward County here if you have some detailed questions about it. Gretchen Cassini, the Assistant County Administrator, and Angela Wallace, the Deputy County Administrator, and I see Andrew Sebo is here from Traffic Engineering, interim Director still? Or?
He's the guy who likes
Okay.
taxes, no wonder why.
Oh, anyway, so I appreciate them being here and okay. All right, I don't come up here very often, but I'll get it. So on June 5th, 2018, the County Commission voted to place the proposed 30-year tax surtax of 1% on the November 6th ballot for the citizens to decide whether they would approve this. In that, they also approved an ordinance that established a transportation surtax trust fund where the funding, approximately $15.6 billion, would be levied over the 30-year period. Those monies would go into a surtax trust fund. They established an oversight board that would review the projects and make sure that they are eligible. And then they also established, the County Commission established an oversight, or the appointing authority who would be responsible for appointing the oversight board. They also provided a process for municipal projects to be ranked and prioritized by the MPO. That process also included a means by which municipalities on an annual basis can submit projects for the surtax. There were findings established in the ILA. The existing transit revenues are unsustainable over the course of years, as we've seen in our city government. Things happen, as you said, in most governments, most businesses, but costs continue to rise. The existing transit revenues for mass transit are unsustainable. The Transit Development Plan, these are 10-year plans for Broward County Transit, is substantially underfunded. It also enables, the surtax would enable funding of the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That is the MPO's long-range plan, where we identify available funding that they project over a 25-year period, and with that funding, how many road or transportation projects can be funded. And there's a list of unfunded projects that would potentially get funded if the surtax passed. It would also enable the MPO and the county and the state to leverage additional state and federal funds for transportation projects with local shares being provided. Transportation surtax provides a means and method for municipalities to submit projects. What they did was they went back to the 2016 surtax. They pulled projects that municipalities, that Coral Springs submitted for that, as well as all municipalities. And we were able to also add projects to that. They received a list of 209 municipal projects, estimated at $2.8 billion, or 18% of the projected revenues. The MPO, the They've also established this process where the MPO will do the ranking and prioritize these municipal projects. And their criteria is to, quote, alleviate traffic congestion and enhance mobility. So that's the criteria. That's what they use for the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and prioritizing projects, and they're proposing that they would use that to also evaluate projects that are the municipal projects. And then they gave a list of eligible projects for municipalities, including street lighting, drainage, landscaping, parking for transit purposes, buffer and sound walls, fiber optic cable for transit, road improvements, and community bus. Now, each one of these categories have several subcategories that are outlined in the ILA. The list of projects. Hopefully you can see that better. This is a list of projects of a little over $69 million worth of projects that the city provided in our proposal, including new sidewalk construction, sidewalks and drainage improvements. This was on 39th Street, out by Coral Ridge and 110th. Guardrail retrofit programs, bus shelter repair and replacement, rebuilding sidewalks and drainage improvements on Coral Hills Drive, roadway resurfacing. On we listed three streets, Royal Palm Boulevard, Westview Drive, and Riverview Drive, and adding bike lanes to those. Downtown improvements, list of improvements in our development order for the downtown, and that would help fund some of those. Alleyway improvements, reconstruction, improving drainage, emergency traffic signals at Fire Station 71, 80, and 64, and an expansion of our community bus service, which would allow us to increase headways and provide greater service to neighboring municipalities or better connections to Broward County Transit. And so that's also a proposal from the city. 2018 transportation surtax would also, if it passes, then there will be additional ILAs that will further define the process between the city, all the cities that are signatories to the ILA, as well as, did I get ahead of myself? No. There will be additional, wait a minute. Okay. I did get ahead of myself a little bit there. There's a minimum of 10% surtax will be dedicated to municipal projects. So of the $15.86 billion, I suppose the $2.8 billion that has been submitted, that's about 18%. But you must be signatory to the ILA. Funding of the municipal projects will be accomplished through an ILA. Additional ILA that will come after the surtax has been approved that will define the process between the city, the counties, and the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Community bus funded from this 10% revenue beginning in 2019. So in order to get community bus funded next year, 2019, beginning in January, if this passes, you would need to sign this by September 30th this year. If not, then we could sign it later, next year, or after October, and then you'd be eligible in 2020. But to get community bus funded next year, I think we spent about $150,000 on community bus. That would be funded 100% by the surtax. The community bus, there's some criteria for it. It'll fund any new and expanded service also. It's also it is not subject to MPO review. That comes from the top of the 10%. But you must maintain a 7.5 passenger per hour per activity. We're a little above that. And the county is not obliged to fund more than 10%. They are able to, they can, they said that they will. That the ILA says that they're not obliged to. Anyway, that is a summary of the ILA, of the interlocal agreement that's being proposed. Should we sign it, then we would get that back to the county. If we approve it, the mayor would sign, and we would, the ILA, and then we would provide it to the county as soon as possible. That's my presentation. If you have any questions.
We're going to have some questions, and I would ask maybe if some of the county people might come up here and help you answer these questions. Yes, Commissioner Carter. Commissioner Carter has a question for you first, Paul.
So on the minimum ridership of 7.1, I mean, every time I drive by a bus, it looks full, but that's an easy number for us to meet?
It has been in the past. We have had some declining ridership, as transit has all over the country. But 7.1 is the minimum for Broward County. I think we're at about 7.6, the latest I've heard. We've been up into
Right.
the 14 and 15 passengers per hour in the past, so.
Any other questions of Mr. Carpenter? Commissioner Vignola?
If the city decides not to approve the ILA, and this surtax were to pass, right? What happens with the money that would have gone to the city of Coral Springs?
That may be that came up at the MPO meeting, and it may be better for, hi. Chris, what did you say?
Anybody want to take that hit?
And it would be available to other municipalities that had signed on to the interlocal agreement to fund their projects.
So I just want our residents to understand that. If this were to pass, we said, hey, we don't want to be a part of this, we'd still be paying the money, we just wouldn't be receiving the benefits.
Any other questions? I have a question. How much of this 10% is going to be allocated to cities such as Coral Springs, which is, what, the 5th largest city in the county, as opposed to, what's that little city down in South Broward? Park?
West Park?
West Park.
West Park, which is what, 3-4 blocks by 4 or 5 blocks? Does anybody have any guarantees what we get?
Well, Mayor Campbell, I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to demonstrate what you had submitted. But I think it's important for your residents and for all of the commission, and thank you for having us, by the way, to understand that 95% of all of the projects that are going to be done through the surtax are being done in municipalities. So besides I think it was $69 million worth of projects that you all submitted directly, you also have your community bus program on top of that. And then you also have all of the projects that the county and the state are planning to do inside of your municipal boundary. So the total amount of projects is going to be well above the $69 million that you submitted specifically for city-controlled projects. And I also want to just clarify that the 10% is a minimum annual guarantee. It's a minimum annual guarantee. In many years, if you look at Exhibit A in the interlocal agreement, you'll see that there are 27 years of the 30 years where there is more than 10% allocated to city projects. And in many of those years, there's actually as much as 50% allocated for city projects. So the total amount going to municipal projects is $3.3 billion of the approximately $15 billion. So our estimates is closer to 22% of the total revenues will be going for municipal projects.
I'm going to follow up with some more questions that I hate to be. I spoke to Mayor Furr about this, and one of the things that concerned me a little bit, what is the governing body? Who's going to make these decisions? Who's going to say, Coral Springs, you're going to get your sidewalks taken care of, or Pompano Beach, you're not going to get your sidewalks taken care of? What does the governing board make up?
So the projects will be prioritized, the projects that are submitted by municipalities that are not streets or improvements that are made by Broward County or the Florida Department of Transportation. The MPO will prioritize those strictly municipal projects based on connectivity and
Traffic congestion.
alleviating traffic congestion. So, and most of the municipalities are represented on the Broward MPO, so it gives representatives from each municipality the ability to review the projects and the needs throughout the county and determine which ones will meet those objectives and then prioritize them on that basis.
Didn't I just see the MPO will have no input?
No,
Only
the
on community
MPO
bus.
will,
They won't have any input on the community bus. That's not something they're going to prioritize. All the other projects would be prioritized and ranked.
correct.
There's
Commissioner Vignola.
I'm sorry, I
In
didn't,
here in the background, it says,
I don't have anything on my screen is what my problem is.
I didn't introduce Chris
I can get it for you,
Walt.
Mayor, but it says they'll provide a process by which any municipality within Broward County may apply for project funding from surtax proceeds, which process includes a request that the MPO review and rank all municipal projects based on each project's ability to alleviate traffic congestion and enhance connectivity. So, MPO will be able to rank them and use that for a nice recommendation list.
Then I have another question. Can you tell me, is synchronization of lights a priority? Because if you don't know, I work downtown Fort Lauderdale, and I probably waste gallons and gallons of gasoline stuck at this light, and I go 2 more lights to get stopped again. And the only one that I really have some continuity is Atlantic. And I've read many studies when I was in the Senate saying that if we could synchronize our lights, that we could save fuel and probably make sure that we don't run out of fossil fuel if we're going to be using fossil fuel for the future. So I looked or tried to find what it might do for that, and I couldn't find it.
Okay, signal synchronization is part of the program. More specifically, adaptive traffic control and expanding the fiber optic network, because right now, the fiber optic network is not complete. Certain roads, certain distances have the fiber optic cable, which allows the better signal synchronization. So the more you can expand that network, the more synchronized the signals will be countywide. Now, as far as your congestion downtown, if it's Broward Boulevard, that happens to have been under construction for the last year and a half. So if that's what you're
Between you and me,
experiencing,
I don't know how the heck Fort Lauderdale is ever going to control their traffic with all the development they got going on there.
But yeah, signal synchronization, particularly the fiber optic connectivity and the adaptive traffic control, is a big part of this surtax plan.
And this will be my last question, and I'll turn it over to other commissioners. I don't want to take up the spot, but one of the things that also concerned me that I saw in a couple of your meetings by Senator Geller, Commissioner Geller, and a couple of the other commissioners was the light train rail system, which would take up a tremendous amount of capital from the penny sales tax. And I'm not too sure it would help any of the citizens of Coral Springs to have a light rail next to 595. Can someone comment on that?
Yeah, Chris Walton, Director of Transportation for Broward County. The plan does envision and identifies 26 miles of light rail, yet to be specifically defined where in the county. We know that we have bus routes and bus corridors that, quite frankly, are currently overburdening our bus system. Now, I'll give you an example. 441 is the most heavily traveled route in the county. We typically, on an annual basis, carry almost 6 million passengers there. And I would compare that with, let's say, the 72-mile Tri-Rail line. Their annual ridership is about 4.5 million. So on that one corridor, we carry about 1.5 million more passengers than they do on the entire Tri-Rail system. That corridor is probably a natural at some point in the future for light rail. There are other corridors within the county that we will be studying along with the MPO, as well as any community that would be considered for light rail, in addition to all of the federal requirements in terms of environmental studies and community involvement. So what I'm saying is a very involved, iterative process that we won't just, though we have identified funding for light rail, we haven't identified it, and it will be quite some time, and it takes, just through the study process, it takes quite a while to actually establish those corridors. So it's a process that will be a little bit down the road.
I apologize to my fellow commissioners, but I do have one more question. Something that really concerned me is the wave downtown Fort Lauderdale, which was going to be 2 miles to move traffic at a cost of about $220 million. And what is that, per mile? That's a lot of money. Is any of this money going to go to revitalizing the WAVE, which would take it away from our projects?
No, the WAVE funding was separated completely from this project. It was actually about a 2.8-mile loop in downtown Fort Lauderdale at a final price tag of about $195 million.
I was a little bit off.
Yeah, just a little
It's
bit.
a lot of money per mile, isn't it?
Oh, it's very expensive.
I mean, I'd take that money for running a couple miles.
Well, that money is gone. That money was specifically dedicated for that project. The federal grants and the state grants that were allocated have actually been returned back to the states and the federal government, so that money is gone.
All right, Commissioner Carter, I know you have some questions. Commissioner Carter, if you could talk into your microphone, because Deborah cannot hear you.
Sorry, Deborah. So it prompted me to ask, if projects are for a particular calendar year and they're not met, will those funds continue to roll over for the municipality?
There's a specific provision in the interlocal agreement that speaks to 2019 prioritization and ranking. It's only in the year 2019, if the MPO is unable to establish a process and hire the appropriate resources to be able to complete ranking and prioritization and recommendations for funding in 2019, that money will roll over. In any other year, the funds will be utilized based on whatever the recommendations for funding are that are brought forth by the MPO. So all of the funds will be utilized for the projects in any other year other than 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to put some historical context here on the penny surtax for this year. For those of you that remember, a couple years ago, there were two items, half a cent each, which one of those items was this similar proposal, right? And the other part of that was the city infrastructure surtax. So if you remember, come election time, this portion that the county's moving forward with actually passed the voters, Broward County. The city infrastructure surtax side failed, and because the two were tied together, ultimately both failed. So I just wanted to let everybody know, one, this is something that the voters of Broward County have conceptually already approved, and I want to echo some of the comments of Commissioner Vignola in that if we don't sign on to the ILA, we don't get to participate.
We still get to pay.
So we still get, right, we still get to pay, we don't get to participate. So it's important that we sign on to the ILA. And I want to just give you a little bit of context just in terms of the other counties in the state. We are one of the only, and this is what was surprising to me a couple of years back, we are one of the only counties that has neither surtax option, right? So you've got counties all the way up in the Panhandle in the reddest parts of the state that have both, and yet in Broward, forward-thinking Broward, we have neither. So I really think that, I want to thank county staff. You've worked with, as the immediate past president of the League of Cities, you've worked with the cities across Broward to get our buy-in, to get our support, and I think you've done an excellent job. And I did want to give a special shout-out and a special welcome to Assistant County Administrator Gretchen Cassini, because for those that don't know, we used to work together in the legislature when I worked for Representative Porth, and Gretchen worked for the county as well. So it's good to see you in Coral Springs. It's always good to see you guys here. Thank you so much for coming, and hopefully you didn't stop at too many traffic lights.
Mr. Goodrum, if any other questions, by the way, from other commissioners, could we have Mr. Michaud come down, because I want him to put on the record as to whether or not he thinks it would help the citizens of Coral Springs and his department. In other words, are you encouraging us to get engaged in with this project so that if it passes, it will eventually help us in our budget process and maybe could lead to some reduction in our millage rate?
Mayor, there would be no commitment to a reduction in the millage rate, but.
I said maybe, I didn't say commitment.
Staff is recommending approval of this, and I'll turn it over to Rich at this time.
Well, as Public Works Director, my priority is always on infrastructure. And this funding source is all about improving roads, sidewalks, drainage, those things that are all about public works. So certainly, from my perspective, I entirely support the ILA moving forward with that as being an alternate funding source in these very hard times.
And could you tell the citizens of Coral Springs, have we been up to date in resurfacing some of our roads, or have we not had the total financial capability of doing it?
Well, I think this program is going to possibly fund $12 million in roadway improvements, and I can tell you that we are so far behind in our road resurfacing program that there are probably 75 miles of roads in Coral Springs that are just city-owned roads that have never been resurfaced since the day they were built.
So you recommend?
Need to catch up on that.
Okay. Commissioner Vignall.
Just one more thing. About a third of the sales taxes in this county are paid for by tourists, people that don't live within Broward County. So this would take some of the tax burden actually off of the residents within Broward County. Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Daly to approve, seconded by Commissioner Vignola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Gretchen. Thank you. I still have my penny.
And Gretchen never came to see me when I was in Tallahassee. All right. Moving on to ordinance 2018-115.
This is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Coral Springs, Florida, amending the Land Development Code of the City of Coral Springs to increase certain sewage service rates and water rates, providing for codification, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. We've already had a public hearing, Mayor. This is just second reading. We request to approve and adopt.
Okay, we've had a public hearing on it. Do I hear any motions?
Move to approve.
All right, moved by Commissioner Daly, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Going on to item number 9. Commissioner Daly, I believe you are the liaison to the Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Yes, Mr.
I
Mayor.
believe there are 5 openings, and I believe we all have a chart because we have to, as I understand it, appoint based upon categories. And for instance, one of the categories, only one of the people are qualified. So if
With that,
you
Mr. Mayor,
could,
do you want to go line by line? And we'll
if
just-
you could, I'd like you to take us through it and with your recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And first and foremost, I want to thank all the folks who put in. You know, for those of you that don't know, we spend so much time in this city working with volunteers. Volunteers step up, save staff time, money, and everything to kind of be a part of what we have going on in this community. And it's always wonderful when you have board appointments to see the wide breadth of individuals that are willing to step up and serve. So that being said, thank you to all those who put in. And if you aren't ultimately selected, just keep in mind that we have limited slots available, but there are other opportunities, and I hope that you'll continue to apply. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll start off with the easiest appointment, because the only qualified applicant for the Category 4 seat is Lyda Marie Ferguson, so that would be my recommendation for that seat, Mr. Mayor.
All right,
Do you want to move each individually? Is that-
let's go ahead and vote on each individually.
Okay, so I would move to,
I'll second.
to
Okay,
appoint Ms.
moved by
Ferguson.
Commissioner Daly, seconded by Commissioner Vignola. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Category 5, I would move to reappoint Mr. Michael Singer.
Second that.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Daly, seconded by Commissioner Vignola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes
Opposed.
unanimously.
Sorry, I was
Wait,
opposed.
hold on one second. Commissioner Carter.
I put a lot of work into this and the research and whatnot, and why each person should, from attendance records to industry qualifications and whatnot. So on Michael Singer, although I think he is a stellar individual and a great contributor to this community, in my review of the resumes and everything else, I felt that there were other qualified candidates. So I will be opposed on Singer, but it passes. It's
Do you
fine.
want to,
It's fine.
it's been moved, but I'm going to reopen it so that you can give us, if you feel that someone is more qualified, an opportunity.
I have my list of 5, but I don't know which slot Michael Singer's would have filled, if that's what you're
Well,
asking.
he's only qualified for
Category 5.
Category 5, that's it.
Jose Luis Mercado, because he had a tremendous amount of overseas experience, which I thought would be useful,
Okay.
because it is economic development.
Does anybody else have any other comments about,
There's a motion on the floor, I believe, and
well, we're going to have to handle, but I kind of like redid my Robert's Rules of Orders, because I'd really like to have discussion. This committee, by the way, is a very critical committee for this city. An Economic Development Advisory Committee does a lot to make sure that this city is progressing in the right direction, and it's been done. So that's why I think it's important to us discuss this.
just the discussion with Mr. Singer. I believe you all know Mr. Singer in his classroom and the wonderful job he does over at Coral Springs Charter School. One of the things I like about him being on a lot of our committees and stuff is these are teachable moments for him to go into his classroom and explain to them what goes on, the various roles of the city and what the city does. Anytime that we can involve our young folk in these processes, I think is important, and he served on the committee, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to do 2 more years.
He actually is the vice chair of the committee, it's my understanding, and it's not just his knowledge and access to the Coral Springs Charter School and all the good work he does there. My understanding is he's got extensive business experience prior to becoming a teacher, prior to going into the classroom.
What?
He worked in an oil company.
Okay. Can you help us get oil companies in Coral Springs?
I think Mike would be the guy for that.
I don't think I'd be a fan of drilling in Coral Springs, Mr. Mayor, if we're going on the record here.
All right, well, question's been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed?
Aye.
All right.
Category 7, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend Mr. Michael Del Pozo. I would move.
I'll second it.
Well, before we second and make a motion, is there any other people, I don't want to just make this, any other people want to talk about?
I had selected Spiro Agos just based on the different levels of experience. I think they're both stellar individuals, so that one was very, very difficult.
Commissioner Carter, I have Spiro for Category 8, if it makes any difference.
Add
There's only 3 on that one. Gil Steinbach, Harold
Stern.
Malamed, and Spiro.
Definitely had Gil as a choice. I just, because he met so many categories, I'm not sure which one he goes under.
I had Gil for Category 8.
I'm sorry I didn't assign him by category. I
It's
picked
understandable.
qualifications.
What,
But we have to fit him in categories.
Right, I
sometimes, and
understand,
it
I
makes it-
understand.
so the question is, for category, is it 7 we're doing now?
We explained this to the public, but there's certain categories people have to meet. So Category 4 was life sciences, pharmaceutical industry. Category 5 was logistics and distribution industry. Category 7 was retail. Category 8 was technology. Category 9 is entertainment, sports industry. So even though we might like somebody for certain things, we might have someone that was already sitting in that seat in that category, and it makes it kind of difficult for us to do this. So when you hear us talking about categories, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fit the needs that, by ordinance, they have to go into.
All right, well, anyway, the motions were made for Michael Del Pozo for category number 7. By Commissioner Daly, seconded by Commissioner Vignola. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously.
I would meet my colleagues halfway on the next one, Mr. Mayor. Nothing against Spiro, but I'd be willing to go with Gil.
I'll move that.
Second.
Well, first of all, are there anybody else that people want to talk about?
Wait, are we
Because
in
Gil is
category-
also in category number 9.
Category 9, Mr. Mayor, you've got an incumbent who's done a great job, and I
Linda
would
Siegel.
like to recommend Linda Siegel for that seat.
Why?
I also had,
All
that
right,
was,
category number 8. Mr. Spiro Agos has been nominated. All in favor?
No, it was
No,
Gil
Mr.
no,
Sternbach.
Gil
The
Sternbach.
motion was Gil Sternbach.
Gil Sternbach was the
All right,
nomination.
that is Gil Sternbach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Category number 9.
I would recommend the incumbent, Ms. Linda Siegel. I would move
Second.
Linda Siegel.
Discussion?
Linda Siegel,
Linda Siegel.
she's on the,
Discussion?
Yes.
That was a tough choice for me because I felt that she had strong business experience, and she's on there, but so is Howard. And Howard, sometimes he can be contentious, but sometimes he's also the voice of reason. So that was a challenge for me. between those two, but in this case,
Howard doesn't meet category 9.
right, I know he's not in this category, but, okay, Linda, fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Moving on to Commission to Communications, Commissioner Vignola, you're recognized.
This week, the city of Coral Springs mourns the loss of Coral Springs Fire Department driver engineer Michael Beef Matnack. Mike was 41 years old. Active in our community since his days as a member of the Coral Springs Police Explorer Program. Beef graduated Taravella High School and the Coral Springs Fire Academy. He started volunteering with our fire department in 1996 and was hired when he went from a volunteer to professional fire service in 2000. Beef was a leader for his fellow firefighters, serving as the head of the Coral Springs Professional Fire Union. When the economy took a downturn, Beef and the fire union agreed to a voluntary wage freeze for all their members and the rest of the city employees also, as he knew it was what was best for the city of Coral Springs. Mike was a great man who meant a lot to many people in our community. He was always there for others, and especially there for me and my family. Beef always kept a cooler filled with water, sodas, and ice, as the tailgate of his truck was a gathering place for anyone who needed a friend. His handshakes would hurt, but this man, who was a gentle giant, always had a smile on his face. Our hearts go out to his family, as he is survived by his 2 sons, Braden and Bryson, his parents, Wayne and Joanne, his brother and Coral Springs Police Department Sergeant Glenn, his sister Julie, as well as his nieces and nephews. He was a dear friend, a good man, and a great father, and he will be sorely missed. If we could please take a moment of silence for Mike Matnack. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Daly.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. Anybody needs to get a hold of me, my cell phone number is 954-778-3304. You can email me at ddaly@coralsprings.org, or you can find me on any of the social media outlets. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Semaglia.
I want to kudos to the fire department, the police department, and salute to our military, as I always do. But this morning, I had the honor of going to Forest Glen Middle School, where Congressman Ted Deutsch did a 7th grade program called 7th Grade Government, and he was teaching these kids government. And that's an experience to sit in the room. I don't know, it must have been 400 12-year-olds in that room. That was exciting. Anyway, that was, we had the gun buyback last Saturday. I heard 129 guns? Very good, very good. And we're getting some good PR on that. So thank you, guys. And if you have any need to contact me, 801-2004-954. My email is lsemaglia@coralsprings.org.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind everybody on September 22nd, there's a hazardous waste drop in collaboration with the City of Margate at Oriole Park on Rock Island. Please remember, for my senior citizens, the senior survey on coralsprings.org/seniors. Our senior health fair will be November 17th between 9:30 and 12:30 at the Coral Springs Gym. And lastly, I want to remind people the museum is having their annual fundraiser called Moon Dance for $50, food, drink, and a 6-piece band. So a wonderful evening and it is the weekend of Halloween, so you do not have to come dressed in a costume. If you need to reach me, my number is 954-998-4186. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, excuse me. We all got a resolution. Where'd Commissioner Daly go? We don't need him necessarily. We have a resolution sent to us by Sunrise Mayor Mike Ryan that was adopted by the City of Sunrise, supporting the closure of Broward County public schools on Election Day or relocation of voting precincts from Broward County Public Schools and providing for an effective date. This was sent around to all of you. You were asked if you wanted to take it up to talk about it and potentially vote on it. The consensus was we would take it up and talk on it and vote on it if we want to. So I'm going to ask any of the commissioners here if they want to vote yes, no, that we also do a resolution in the city of Coral Springs.
I think it would be good if we close the school.
McDowell.
I hear about this all the time from my kid's school, from my daughter's school, my wife's school. To have strangers coming in on campus, it's a logistical nightmare for our police department, for school security. There's no reason why we should be having class those days where we have strangers coming in where you can't ask for ID when someone goes in to vote and let them or not let them on the property. I would not be in favor of moving the polling locations just because of the fact that you want to have access, especially for those in our community that have special needs to get out to vote. But I think absolutely the schools should be closed. I don't think that's even a question. I know we've had this discussion in the past when we had our March election and we received all those emails and things and comments from our community members. As this gets closer, and I'd like to thank the Mayor of Sunrise for bringing this up, but as this gets closer and parents start realizing this, I think it's going to create a problem, and we're going to hear a lot about it. So I thank him for doing this. I think it's something that we need to do.
Okay, any other questions? Any other comments?
I'm supportive.
Okay, Commissioner Daly, any comments?
No, sir.
All right. You know, we had a tragedy that occurred in our community that none of us ever thought would occur in our community on February 14th. I think for the public safety of our children, that this is the right thing to do. And therefore, I will open it up to a motion to do a similar resolution, if you guys are agreeing with that resolution. Moved by Vice Mayor Cimaglia, seconded by Commissioner Daly.
Mayor, we'll do this as a draft and adopt, and we'll draft it and have you sign it.
Yeah, we'll draft and adopt it and get it out as soon as possible so the cities know about it.
And just real quick, the school district added in extra days this year in case of a hurricane. So there are some padded in days where they could make this happen and still meet the educational requirements.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. That's all I have. Mr. Goodwin?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's a big night for our city with the budget, and I'd like to thank our outstanding budget staff that worked tirelessly on it. I'd like to thank our directors who worked very hard to work on their budgets within their departments and create a 5-year plan that is in the positive. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't take that for, don't truly appreciate that, but that's huge for us, and that gives us the ability to invest in our city. So I'd like to thank that. And I'd also like to thank every employee, because this 5-year plan requires sacrifice from every employee. And our employees have worked together and hard to help with this process. And I just want to thank every employee for that and for providing for what I believe is the long-term success of our city. At this time, I'll turn it over to Fire Chief and Assistant City Manager Frank Babinett.
Mayor, Commission. Larry, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. The fire department has suffered a great loss of somebody that has provided over 20 years of service to their community. We will be honoring Mike's service on Saturday at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, 1401 Coral Ridge Drive at 11 a.m. He will get a funeral that comes along with some honors for his service. He was an active member of this of our organization, and we look to make sure that he gets the respect and dignity that he deserves. We appreciate from the fire department. We appreciate everybody's words and concern and just support that we've gotten. Been working closely with Mike's family, with the union, and with the benevolent to make sure that any services that we do are commensurate of his service. So, City Manager Goodrum, thank you very much for all of your support and our city attorney. And if you have any questions, I can answer them. If not, if you can make it, I hope to see you guys on Saturday.
Okay, Mr. Goodrum?
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Hearn?
Mayor, I have nothing to add.
Adjourned.